gentlemen, and it's 6 p.m. and welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful July 2nd day. I hope many of you have recovered from the long weekend celebrating Canada Day. I know the weather wasn't too cooperative, but there was a lot of things that happened down at Heritage Park, and we actually had some festivities and some street performers, etc. And we capped it off with a citizenship ceremony at 2 o'clock, which was great to see 51 new Canadians sworn in to be part of the family. So it's good to see so many people in the audience today. Usually we don't have anybody in here, so this must be a special occasion. So either it's too cold outside and too wet to do anything else, and you guys decided to spend your day with me. So thank you very much. Members of council, you have an agenda before you. You can see that's there. Administration, any changes or additions to the agenda?
Your Worship, just a note, 4.1 RCMP update. Inspector Loken isn't available to join us this evening, so we'll look at rescheduling that for, I believe, sometime in September.
Okay, so thank you. So members of council, when we accept it, do we accept it as the agenda is presented, or should we change it now before we accept it?
Your Worship, I think it's probably best just to adopt it without 4.1 on there. So.
Okay. Okay, so members of council will adopt it without the 4.1, so everything gets changed. Okay, with that, Deputy Mayor, motion please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that the governance and priorities agenda for July 2nd, 2019 be adopted minus 4.1.
Thank you. As amended?
As amended.
So call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Move on to public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the agenda. If you're in chambers to talk to council about something that's not on the agenda, please come forward now. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and delegations. Go on to 4.1, which is the Glockenspiel Clock Tower with Mr. Backer in the audience. Sir, please come forward.
Like those things, but I guess.
We can't hear you if you don't.
Yeah, well.
Thank you, Councillor Mandies. Welcome, Mr. Backer, and I understand that you can speak quite loudly without the mic, so if... But the mic helps us pick up the sound behind you so that people in the gallery are able to hear as well. So please go ahead.
Chairman, as you have seen, I have a little bit of a problem with my hearing. The problem with those hearing aids is that I hear the things that I shouldn't be hearing, and I don't hear the things that I want to. I noticed a few things. All of you have come with a big container with coffee. When I was a county councillor and school trustee, Parkland County was much more generous. We had one of those big coffee making machines, and we could have as much coffee as we wanted. And I'll tell you, the amount of coffee that was used in a whole day. Anyway, I thank you. When I came to the town office to find out when I could make this presentation, I met Leanne. And she asked me what it was all about. And I told her it's about history, mostly local history. She said that the 2nd of July would be a suitable date. Well, yesterday we celebrated Canada's birthday. My presentation today is also about history. The timing is perfect. I want to thank Leanne for arranging and for planning this. Leanne is a very gracious lady. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of council and administration, tonight I will speak about history because I believe history is important. That it is important because we can and we should learn from history. I have here a book of about 400 years of the Becker family history. For 2 weeks, I slept in a room where my father was born, a home that was owned by the Becker family for over 300 years. I was born in the Netherlands, in a small city that has 1,000 years of recorded history. It has a city hall that was built some 600 years ago, and it is still used as a city hall. And let me tell you, the acoustics are wonderful. You don't need any of those darn things. So that's why I'm still mentioning this, to explain to you why I have that interest in history. About 160 years ago, Ukrainian immigrants came, settled, and developed Vegreville and its area. That community acknowledged the incredible sacrifices of those hardworking people when the famous Egg Statute was built. It honors the Ukrainian people, their culture, and their traditions, the legacy of their ancestors. It has made Vegreville famous and contributed significantly to making it a vibrant community and a center for agricultural research and development. About 130 years ago, German immigrants came and settled in this area. They were a very diverse people. Some came from various parts of Europe, some came from the Netherlands, from the United States, some from Russia, but they all spoke German and shared the German culture and tradition of being very hardworking and determined people. They were courageous people who traveled an immense and often dangerous distance to Stony Plain. They were confident that with determination, working hard, they would have a better future here. They faced adversity, but did not give up. Some of them settled north of Stony Plain, others south and west, some east. Those German people made productive farms and thriving communities. They built the hamlet of Stony Plain. It was a mile south and east of here. When the railways were built, the Stony Plain hamlet was moved to where we are now. One of the original hamlet buildings is located on Main Street and the corner of 51st Avenue. It were the early German immigrants who developed Stony Plain, who made it a vibrant, dominant center for services such as the railways. Vegreville has honored its Ukrainian pioneers and their culture with the famous Egg Statute. Stony Plain has not acknowledged and honored its German pioneers' legacy and its culture. In the German history, a glockenspiel was used to commemorate a significant event or time. It's part of their culture. I have seen some in Germany. They were located in the spire or tower of a church, and that made it very prominent and visible. Churches had a large open space in front, and that could accommodate a large crowd. Those large churches had clocks, and on the hour, doors close to the clocks would slide open, and a large, very slow turning round platform was visible. On that platform were figures depicting the purpose of the glockenspiel. I have seen a glockenspiel in New Ulm, a city, a German community in Minnesota. And it was, I believe, in the late 1700s, attacked by bands of Indians. The settlers defeated those Indians and saved the settlement and the community. That glockenspiel commemorates that epic battle, and it was located in the City Hall Tower. It depicted hunters, women, farmers, and merchants. Traditional music was also played. The only reason we were in New Ulm some 35, 40 years ago was to see the glockenspiel. We camped our RV in a beautiful park that was close by. New Ulm honors its very early German pioneers. Wegreville honors its pioneers with the famous egg statue. The Stony Plain Parkland Pioneer Museum has a building that is dedicated to and honors our pioneer women with exhibits that depicts the amazing influence women had and still have in the community. The town of Stony Plain has not honored our courageous early German pioneers who developed this area. I urge you, Mr. Chairman and members of council, to create a glockenspiel. It would acknowledge their culture, their vision, their amazing accomplishments. I believe you already have a building very suitable to include a glockenspiel. The wonderful Heritage Pavilion has a tower. It has clocks, has a perfect location with convenient parking for tour buses and visitors. Future murals should also be located there. The downtown murals located helter-skelter have very limited public interest because of no convenient public parking. Today, for any project, whether business, services, or sports, the public demands convenient parking. In June, on Farmers' Day, people were visiting the museum. Public parking was on the vacant site of the Memorial High School, which is not owned by the town and is 3.1 kilometers from the museum. The Heritage Park can become the center for the cultural, sports, and community activities when the park includes the adjacent and many years vacant and weed-infested land. The Stony Plain Parkland Pioneer Museum needs more space for public parking, more land for the growth and yearly increase in artifacts and buildings. The museum is recognized as one of the top museums in Alberta. It has restored our historic town hall, where the early town councils planned the steady development of the town. The museum preserves and displays the early farming practices and equipment. In the Fall Harvest Festival, modern farming is demonstrated, and it reminds us that farming is still the pillar of our economy. The museum is the custodian of history, but it also teaches history. Last summer, a large group of Japanese students and their teachers spent nearly a day at the museum. They were impressed when they learned when and how Alberta became a vibrant, progressive province. They were amazed that it were the pioneer men and women who, with their hands, transformed our wilderness to productive farms and thriving communities. That remarkable change was made by our German pioneer men and women, the Scheidemans, the Henkels, the Scheps, the Kulaks, to mention a few. When you create a glockenspiel, you acknowledge, you honor the early pioneers. It also reminds us that their descendants are the pillars, the leaders in this area, and that they are the legacy of our early pioneers. The location of a glockenspiel in Heritage Park is exceptionally appropriate, and with the adjoining Stony Plain Parkland Pioneer Museum, you would have a fantastic partnership, a partnership that honors the heritage of our pioneer men and women, and a partner that preserves, exhibits, and teaches that heritage. Mr. Chairman, all of this would identify Stony Plain as a community that promotes quality of life.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and the idea of creating a glockenspiel clock tower at the Heritage Park. Sounds very interesting. Members of council, any questions of clarification to Mr. Backer? Deputy Mayor?
Just for clarification, Mr. Bacher, I wasn't sure what a glockenspiel was until I looked it up. And it was sort of what I imagined, a clock with, anyhow, I think I may have looked at the same Minnesota glockenspiel. It looks like a fairly sturdy built brick type clock tower with a few moving mechanical devices for the characters on it. I'm curious if that's what you have in mind, because the other design that I saw on the internet was a more elaborate sort of like a European type design with what looks like many moving pieces and whatnot. So I'd be curious. I mean, early in this discussion, but I'd be curious as to what you had in mind.
Good. So is it going to be like a musical clock that goes around?
I am sorry.
Okay, so
I can repeat. Sorry, what I was saying was I was on the internet and I found two fairly common designs. There's like a European, very intricate, very ornate style, and then it's interesting that you mentioned the Minnesota one because I think that is the other example that I saw, and it was much more how I would characterize sturdily built, sort of a low maintenance type of example with very few like mechanical moving characters on it. I was curious as to which design you kind of had in mind. I realize it's early in discussions and all the rest of this, but I'd just be curious.
The ones that you see in Germany is, it depends on the wealthy part of the population, because it costs money to do this. It costs money to build a huge church. And so that had something to do with it. And a lot of it also depended what was the purpose of this glockenspiel. Like the one we saw in Minnesota, it was that battle that saved the lives of the people.
okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Councillor Matties?
So much for coming, Mr. Backer. I have a question with regards to your...
Mr. Chairman, would you allow me if I would come to you, because I have difficulty hearing it, I'm sorry.
Sure, please do.
Oh, I can speak louder. Well, okay.
Carl? Can you
Thank you. So my question is, with regards to your vision of having it at this clock at the Heritage Pavilion versus maybe a vision of having a more of a walkable community downtown area where we were talking about maybe creating a new town hall, over time, why do you think the Heritage Pavilion is the best place to put this?
The Heritage Pavilion, because you have convenient parking.
Okay.
And that is the absolutely unnecessary. I mean, the murals, the artistry is fantastic, but there is no convenient parking.
Okay.
And on top of that, some of them are put on the buildings. Like the first building of Bud's shoes repair place, it was Mrs. Wood, the woman who had more influence and impact on this community than anybody else. And it was an excellent mural, but the building was destroyed,
Right.
and so was the mural. So I think murals should be by themselves,
Okay.
not on buildings. There's a mural of Dr. Otway, and I know him quite well. He was my doctor.
Right.
But there's no public parking.
Got it.
And that's the problem. And that's I think, is the mistake.
So you're saying our culture, so our murals and this honoring the German community with the clock would be best placed in one area where people could go as a destination. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. I do have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Backer. So I understand back in history in Germany and all in Europe, the glockenspiel clock towers were done and created by the churches.
Yeah.
Is there any examples of municipalities doing it?
Well, I think the reason was that churches were, in those cities, they were used buildings. You know, the city where I was born, it had two churches that were built in the 1500s. That was at that time the glory time of the Netherlands. The one was built and it had a huge tower. And because of the soil conditions, the whole church was built on the hides of cows. Well, that was in the southern part of the city. The people in the north said, hey, we can do better. So they started building, and it's huge. And it's so huge, they never had money to finish the tower, because by that time the economy had gone down. But it's so huge that a truck can drive in the alleys between the sheets, the benches. That's how big it is. It would probably accommodate, I would say, probably 3,000–4,000 people.
Okay.
And that's why those churches were the best place. Whereas the city halls, they were not much bigger than this one. Because in the 1500s, there wasn't very much to decide. And what there was to decide was decided by the business people.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. And just another question for you. You mentioned parking is a must, but as I Googled all the glockenspiel clock towers that are on YouTube, there is no parking. Everybody has to walk to that area. So is parking important, or is walkability and having the kind of a square idea so people can actually enjoy it and see different things and just drive there and then drive away?
We just don't like having to walk.
That's true. Okay. Thank you very much for your time and presenting this concept to us. Definitely is something for us to talk about and maybe.
It is really something when you sleep in a room where your father was born. I mean, that's an experience that is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Council, moving on our agenda items, 4.2 is the YRL update. And I believe we have representatives here today. So. So good evening and welcome to Council Chambers. There is a sign-up sheet there if you can just sign in as well. And if you can introduce yourselves to council and to the gallery before you start. And again, if you can speak directly into the microphone so that we can hear and then people in the gallery can hear as well.
Well, just for Peter, my name is Hank, or my real name is Hendrik Smit. I'm also Dutch, but again, Peter did a great job. I guess history is important. And beside me here is our executive director of YRL, and this is Carla Palachuk. And today we would like to give you a little bit of an update of what's happening at the regional libraries level and to explain what we do.
We would also like to thank Councillor Bennett for representing the town of Stony Plain very, very well on the Yellowhead Board. And I would also like to acknowledge that Allison Stewart, the library director for the library here, is sitting behind us, and acknowledge the quality of work and leadership that she and her staff demonstrate daily, both inside the Yellowhead region and also provincially. They've been very active in providing support and leadership to other libraries across the province. Also with us today is Lori Hawk, who's the admin assistant for Yellowhead and is a resident of Stony Plain.
You might have to use that.
There we
Oh,
go.
there we
Yay.
There you go.
I'm not technologically challenged all the time. So just a little bit about Yellowhead. We are one of the 7 regional systems in the province, and on the map provided, the Yellowhead boundaries are marked in yellow. The boundaries have been established by the province under the Libraries Act. Within these boundaries, we have 54 member municipalities and 3 school divisions that have decided to work together to offer library services to their residents. This has been a strong, cohesive, and collaborative 47-year-old partnership, and it has made significant difference to the libraries and the communities in this area. As an aside, the gray areas on the map represent a key partnership for Yellowhead. It's Yellowhead plus the 3 other regions that form the Regional Automation Consortia, or TRAC. In the north, we have Peace Library System around Grand Prairie. On the right-hand side, we have Northern Lights Library System, which is headquartered in Elk Point. And in the south there, we have Marigold Library System, which is in Strathmore. Together, we provide services to 189 different libraries, and we have access to over 3 million material items. Yellowhead Regional Library is governed by a board of trustees, and the structure, the power, and the obligations of which are defined again by the Public Libraries Act, but also by the Master Membership Agreement. Trustees are appointed by each participating municipality and each school division. The Board of Trustees then elect a chair, a vice chair, and an executive. Otherwise, I would have a board of 54 people. So the executive is 10, and they have full governance power, except for budget decisions, audit approval, and membership agreement changes. On those topics, the executive makes the recommendation up to the board, and then the full board votes on it. In terms of revenue, our master membership agreement sets out the levy by which municipalities contribute. For Stony Plain in 2018, it was $73,912.70. I will add that our school divisions pay $13.95 per FTE students. Public libraries pay $4.30 per capita. So the school divisions are contributing significantly higher. Yep. So how do we spend that money? What we do is, we're not a public library. We do not duplicate municipal library services. We're not open to the public. We're here to serve the libraries and the library staff. We reduce the time spent by library staff on routine, time-consuming, and specialized tasks. By taking those tasks away, we can allow your staff to focus on community needs and community activities. The costs of these activities are then shared through the members. Yellowhead can negotiate large supplier discounts because of our economies of scale, and we also get free shipping because of the volumes that we purchase, and we can also build relationships with the vendors and the suppliers in order to get the discounts that are not available to libraries if they were trying to get to it on their own. We check with our vendors regularly to ensure that we get the best deal possible for the libraries, and this also includes AV material and e-resources. We are able to hire and retain staff with specialized knowledge on acquisitions, cataloging, and IT functions. We can follow up-to-date industry standards, and the items that we receive are then ready for your customers to use. We also do the delivery. We reduce the amount of time and material needed by your libraries in order to package and move materials through the region and also to other parts of the province. Out of the funding that is provided from the town of Stony Plain, over almost $13,000 of it comes back to you in terms of book allotment that the library here can use to buy materials. Further expenditures for us are $175,000, which is Yellowhead's share of the Regional Automation Consortia, or TRAC. This is the core business application for public libraries. That's 1/4 of the cost. Because we split it between the other members of TRAC, we only have to pay a portion of it. If we were to go on it on our own, we would have to pay the full cost of that. So we see significant savings, but we also see significant expertise because the regions rely on each other to provide support. What else? The Yellowhead also invests over $200,000 a year on e-resources. So this is e-books, e-audiobooks, magazines, newspapers, comic books, streaming movies, TV shows. And this is, again, the buying power of being inside of a consortia. There's been a lot of media coverage lately on the cost of e-books and what libraries have to pay. Right now, the average price is about $65 per ebook, and you do not get to keep it forever. A lot of publishers are moving to a 2-year model, and then we have to repurchase. If a book is really popular, like the Game of Thrones, the cost per ebook copy can go up almost to $200 per copy for a library. So being able to pool our resources and rely on negotiating power means that we can get more content for less money.
Yeah.
Yep. What else we do is provide specialized network infrastructure and the staff to support it. Yellowhead has now created and also manages the websites for our member libraries, which makes it easier to have an online presence with less upkeep required on the library's end. It can also link to Facebook pages, highlight your programs and resources, or anything that you want to show off to drive traffic to the library site. In 2018, over 18,000 users created over 43,000 sessions on your website and looked at 124,000 pages, which is a significant amount of traffic coming to a library webpage. Yellowhead also supports the public wireless access points for the library here, including the hardware support and replacement. So we look after all of that. There was over 75,000 Wi-Fi access sessions, connections through Stony Plain in 2018. And through Stony Plain, the public library, through Yellowhead, is also a member of the Alberta Library. And our participation in TEL gives us access, your customers here, your residents here, access to over 15 million items and over 230 sites in the province. That's public and academic libraries. We work collaboratively with member libraries on planning, workflows, collection development, space planning, program, and policies. We provide training to member libraries at your site or through in-services and conferences or online training. We provide training and support to library trustees. And we provide kits that focus on things like physical literacy, digital literacy, early literacy, in order to provide additional resources to your libraries as they work in the community. We provide a forum for library managers to share ideas, information, keep up with new directions and initiatives. And we're working on advocacy campaigns right now. I think that's it for me, so I'm going to turn it over to Hank for the next bit.
By the way, I'm the chair of YRL, and so part of my strengths are basically a plan of service, like you guys do a strat plan when you guys first become council members. And so we do the same thing in the library world. And our strategies are listed on the page right now, or on the presentation. Provide quality services, strengthen organization capacity, and demonstrate value for it. We always like to hear from the people we service so that we can actually service them better. And so hearing from councils helps quite a bit and helps us tailor the needs that you guys have to what we can provide to your library, because this is what we are. We are helping your library. Yeah, also advocacy is a big part. Okay, again, part of being a chairperson is to advocate for you guys as well at a provincial level. We've done that quite well with letters to our minister, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, as well as during the election we gave libraries strategies to use to help with the election that just passed. And so we are continuing this effort and do meet quite often. I believe we're meeting one more time during the summer as well to further this. And so any ideas you have, even in advocacy, to help us along, that would definitely be appreciated. Okay? Next one is, the whole deal of being the chairperson is I have to talk money. And last time we raised our rates were in 2009. I have yet to meet a council that hasn't raised taxes since 2009, so, but again, it's becoming unattainable to keep up the pace that we have. We are moving through more books and more material. Your library here is, wow, it's full. Every time I've been in there, it's amazing how many people you fit into that small building. It amazes me, and I know there's one coming. And so I'm really happy about that. I think Allison's even happier, but again, this all costs money. And so for the next year, starting in 2020, we have a board approval already to raise it to $4.39 per capita. Okay, what this means for you guys is an increase of $1,547.01 for 2020. In 2021, we will also increase it to $446, which is an additional 2019 numbers of $2,750.24. Again, I believe you see value in what you do. We have done cost breakdowns and what it is for libraries to move out on their own, and together we are stronger, together we could share, and together we are much more effective and efficient. So this is it for the presentation. If there's any questions you'd like to bring forward, now's your time.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and welcome to council, because I believe this is the first time that you have been to council, Carlos, since your, I guess, promotion or getting the job as the executive director, so welcome to council. That was very informative, especially for members of council that have not been part of the YRL or the library board, so thank you very much for that. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Matties?
Your worship, to our guests, thank you very much for coming. Question for you. What is the vision for YRL over the next 10, 20, 25 years?
Well then, first of all, I can tell you it's to continue what we are doing, okay, to being basically not frontline work, but in the background helping your library. But again, Carla knows more.
Hank laughs at me sometimes because I say my vision is to take over most of the world in a lot of ways.
I'm supposed to tell them.
I know, it's a secret.
okay.
But it's not. You can tell by the laughter behind me. My vision for Yellowhead is to position it completely as the innovative library leader for the province that provides exceptional customer service to the members that we support, which means that we're being responsive. We are going out, we are understanding your concerns and understanding your needs. I can't predict what will happen in 20 to 25 years, but I do know that we have to pay attention to what's happening in the electronic world, what's happening in document delivery, interlibrary loans, and resource sharing. To that end, I have talked track, and I'm working with another regional library system to take advantage of some leading edge technology. It's not cutting edge because other people are already doing it, but in the States, to be able to share our resources, our e-resources more effectively. We have to pay for these things anyway, and if they're not being used, it's a waste of money. So how can we work together provincially to make those resources stronger and more accessible to everybody? And Parkland and Track will be piloting this in Alberta starting next week. It will be seamless to the users, but it will make access more available and access more timely for the users. I want to see our staff connect with your staff more readily to be able to identify, survey, and understand what your user groups are facing. One of the things that we're hearing right now is the requirement for broadband in rural areas. So one of the things that the board is looking at is how do we advocate to the federal government in order to improve broadband access for all Albertans, regardless of where they live. So I have very broad ideas. We'll see how it plays out. Did I answer your question?
You did. I just have one follow-up question, if you wouldn't mind. So with regards to some of the changes we have, like, so, I mean, we were built with a number of different cultures coming to our community, and moving forward, we're seeing more and more cultures coming to our community. How would the library serve additional groups, different cultures moving forward?
Thank you for asking that. I'm going to go back into my history, and in 2006, because of that, I was in the position I was in, I was able to introduce Orlog's Tell Me More language learning software into Alberta Public Libraries. And that's now morphed into Mango Languages, and then it morphed into something else that I can't remember. Public libraries are the community hub gathering places for people who are not familiar with libraries, are coming from cultures and communities where public libraries is not a given. A lot of communities in Africa, in some European, Middle East, you do not go into a library because it's run by a government. What we can do is help support your libraries with learning resources, language learning resources, economic development, resume creating resources, and I also have teachers on staff who have the skills to be able to teach the staff here how to work with adults in a learning environment. We also then have literacy issues with that. We have computer literacy issues. And Yellowhead can position your staff to be successful because we have the tools to teach your staff how to work with them. And I would like to see more of that work being done provincially.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, this question mostly comes just from my lack of knowledge, so I don't want to step on any toes. I'm just referring to the report that we have in our agenda package on page 17, collaborations and connections. And anyhow, I think you maybe kind of touched on it a little bit in regards to the e-resources, because as I read through this page, each one of these partners and collaborators, in some manner, it speaks to e-resources, and so you were mentioning in your vision you'd like to sort of see that maybe a little streamlined. My original question was, why does there seem to be so many sort of overlapping sort of groups that to successfully bring us our library services? But I think, having listened to you a little bit more, but I wouldn't mind if you could explain maybe the difference these guys provide our library, so I can understand maybe.
Thank you. Lori provided me with page 17 so I could see what we're looking at here.
Oh, good.
So Alberta Municipal Affairs Libraries Branch is the overarching controller of the Libraries Act and regulation.
Like, would you, like, I'm sorry if I could cut you off there. I see that they're sort of providing the grant.
Yes.
If I could think of it sort of as and it obviously operates under the municipal affairs. So if I could think of them as sort of the government, the money, if that's
Yes.
okay.
Yep, so they're the money. The Regional Automation Consortium, or TRAC, is a partnership between the four of us, and that started in 1996. So a core business application for libraries currently is about $2.6 million. So in 1996, the four of us, actually there were 6 of us, who did not have the money to replace it. We had to. The province had enough for 2. They had enough for one region to go on their own, and that was Parkland. And they asked the rest of us to look at whether or not we could be innovative and how we could share the money to make it go further. As a result, we did a study and then agreed to move forward together on a core business application that served, at the time, 3 regional library systems and 160 libraries. When Pieces license went out on their installation, they came under TRAC. And now we have 4 out of the 7 regional library systems on one system, which has been a huge benefit. It's reduced costs. It's given an ease of use for residents who work within our areas because they don't have to use another library card to borrow materials from there. And it's sped up interlibrary loans. So it's been a cost savings and a cost reduction measure for all of us on that end of it. And then off to the side and provincial is the Alberta Library, or TAL. And TAL is a consortia. It's the only one of its kind in Canada or in North America that was multi-type. So colleges, universities, government, special libraries, and public libraries all came together again in 1996 to see how they could work together to achieve more. So again, the whole idea of collaboration and cooperation. TAL then announced the only and the first provincial library card that was issued by your individual libraries and allowed you access to the print collections of the University of Alberta, University of Calgary, and then the colleges and everybody else fell into line. They also operate the Provincial Union Catalog. So if you're not sure where an item sits and you can't find it inside of the really robust track database, you can search for it provincially and then ask for it to come into Stony Plain via government courier or interlibrary loan. And so all of us, we don't duplicate our services. What we do is we enhance each other's services. Did that
Yeah,
answer?
no, it did, actually.
Specifically asking about e-resources, period?
Well,
And why we have $200,000 set aside for that? Is that your
Well,
question?
that's another good question.
Because the government only pays so much. If you want something more, you can't really go back to the government and ask them to fund that. We fund more. I guess she could speak to that a little bit better. So.
What TAL has done is TAL was an early adopter for the negotiation for e-resources. And they have the expertise to be able to work with the vendors to get the right pricing. And so as a member of TAL, we're beneficiaries of that pricing negotiation. A lot of it has moved in-house into municipal affairs now, but TAL still does anything that is post-secondary, school, or public library that might blend over the sectors. So a lot of the research databases, some of the specialized content, or the new stuff that's coming out. But TAL is seen as the place to go in Alberta for that kind of negotiation. So we pay a membership fee to belong to TAL, but what we get back in terms of cost reduction is about $115,000 worth of content.
Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just on a slightly, just a more personal note, because also on that page, speaking of the SuperNet, and it references, I think I looked it up online, your guys' ability to conference call. Now, you were mentioning with 54 members and all the rest of it. I was wondering just if you, just on a personal level, do you guys utilize that a lot? Is it an effective means of communication for you guys?
We do use it. We use it for meetings, mostly video conferencing meetings, very rarely for training, unless it's training for individual libraries and being able to video conference somebody in. It has been very effective for us. A lot of our meetings are involving people in Elk Point, population 1,401 people, just north of Vermilion and Vegreville. Grand Prairie and Strathmore. So to try to bring all four of us together and our staff together would cost us hundreds of dollars in travel, flights, particularly coming down from Grand Prairie. So it's been, we can have monthly meetings, we can have monthly team meetings, we use it very effectively and we're really happy we have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? See none, on behalf of council, thank you very much for the work and services that you provide our library. I know our library is enhanced because that they are part of the YRL, so thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
And thank you for the comments about Councillor Bennett and Alison Stewart. We never knew that about them, so
I'm sure.
it's nice to hear somebody else say that. Right. Okay, members of council, moving on our agenda, 4.3 is the cohesive communities. And I believe we have two individuals with us to present. So good evening. So again, there is a sign-up sheet if you can sign in there, and then again, introduce yourselves to council and to the gallery before you start.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving us the chance to spend some time with you today. I am Mandy Unger, and as you may already know, this is Amy Quintel, President of the Cohesive Communities Foundation. I am on the board for Cohesive Communities, and we are here to support local families who have children with disability.
So just a little background on how we were founded. I think it was around 2014, myself and a few other parents from the town of Stony Plain, Parkland County, and Spruce Grove had just started to informally advocate for changes in our communities because we really just had a desire to be able to take our children out and do regular things like grocery shopping, go to a park, those things that people with neurotypical children sometimes take for granted. It basically started out as advocating for Carolyn's carts at local grocery stores and swings in parks. And then we saw a need to help others and to forge new connections. And so myself and my co-founder, Christy Bly, formalized things. We both have children with complex needs. And here we are today. So thank you very much. And I'll let Mandy take it from here.
So it is our mission to improve the quality of life for children and families with disabilities, including but not limited to medical and developmental challenges, through free access to information, resources, individual and group support programs, and advocacy from our dedicated volunteer board who have direct knowledge of what it means to raise a child living with disability or complex needs. Since 2016, we have been operating programs, supports, and services which are making an enormous difference in our disability, in the disability community, and in our communities at large. Our programs and services are all free of charge and include group family support programs, emotional support and mentorship, navigating systems, funding, as well as individual family advocacy. One of the most important services we offer is individual advocacy and support for families who are having difficulty accessing funding or resources for their disabled child. We help empower families and connect them to the systems of support required for their individual family circumstances. We are often referred these types of cases by our community partners, which include referrals from FCSS, Early Intervention, and APFA. It can be overwhelming to face the reality your child has extraordinary challenges on your own, which is why our work is a necessary service to families in the Tri-region who face more barriers in accessing resources for their children in rural settings than, for instance, those who reside in larger urban areas. We've been running our family support program at the Stony Plain Public Library for the last 2 years with the generous help of a donation and $1,900 community grant from Stony Plain. While parents enjoy and take part in self-care activities and workshops on topics relevant to parenting children with disability, we provide a qualified respite program for each child, regardless of extraordinary need. This time also gives parents a chance to connect with each other within the community and utilize the library resources. The children's program includes support workers, therapy students, and youth mentors. We have families attending this program from all 3 municipalities in the Tri-region. We also offer a coffee talk for parents 4 times a year, which gives them a chance to connect and unwind. Coffee Talk has also given the community members a chance to expand their network and create new ones. This really helps to build mentorship and camaraderie between families. Since 2016, the Cohesive Community Foundation has had the great opportunity of working with the Stony Plain Library for our support program. Now that there is a new library being built, we have been actively participating with the design team on the design of a barrier-free and inclusive library. With the new design, there will be many new opportunities for programs such as our multi-sensory equipment lending library. This program works on a sign-out basis and gives parents and children the opportunity to try and test before going out to purchase equipment themselves, as these items can be financially out of reach. We have been offering consultative services within the Tri-region to municipalities and organizations on how to make our communities inclusive for all. For example, barrier-free and inclusive design for new parks and community spaces, most recently the design of the new Stony Plain Library. We are increasingly being seen as a valued resource for many community initiatives, which is a role we want to continue to sustain to ensure disability the disability community, and specifically our young families, feel supported and welcomed anywhere they go. Once again, our mission for the Cohesive Communities Foundation is to support inclusion of children and youth living with disability in all community environments, so every family touched by disability feels welcomed and supported. Our vision is that we envision our communities as places where all people are valued and met exactly where they are at. We see our communities embracing diversity in its fullest form, where eventually inclusion just becomes part of our everyday mindset. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our work, and we are open to questions now if there are any.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mandy and Amy, for your presentation. It is great to see what cohesive communities are doing in our town, because it is difficult to, I think it's just difficult to be a parent regardless, but it's even more difficult to parent a child with special needs, just extra care. And sometimes just having, like you said, somebody to talk to every fourth Saturday, to come just have this out, so that there's respite to give parents that mental break, that little break that they need, so that they can actually continue on their days. So thank you for that. Members of council, any questions and comments for the presenters, for understanding? Deputy Mayor?
Well, thank you, guys. I just wanted to make a note. I know my own experience driving a special needs run for the Parkland County exposed me to some of the complexities and the good work that your guys' organization presents for the families, and the outcomes is what I wanted to say. It makes a big difference, and you guys should be recognized for that, and that's a great thing that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Anything else? Councilor Loy?
Yes, Your Worship. I just kind of like to echo what Deputy Mayor said. I think the work you do is really outstanding, and it is definitely required. I think you understand it better than probably most people, and have stepped up to the plate. And I'm glad we've been able to help in some small way. Money's always tight. Everybody's always looking for money, and you're not here for money. I realize that. But it's an awareness, so that we are aware, so that when we do our strategic planning and stuff like that, to say, where are we going to place funds? We keep all organizations in front of us, so I appreciate your information package, and good luck to the future and to the people you love.
You mentioned that the town of Stony Plain provides you with a grant, and also definitely the Stony Plain Library supplies space and probably at discounted rates, or don't charge you guys at all, which we support. So, so in terms of funding, and I'd like to see more things happen through this organization. Do you have other partners that provide financial support?
Right now, we rely on donations from the business community. We are very close to having our charitable status. We don't have it yet. We were lucky enough to receive a SIP operating grant through the Alberta Lottery Fund just over a year ago. And so that allowed us to have a very part-time staff for about a year, which wasn't sustainable. And quite frankly, we realize that's not who we are. We're grassroots, and we're hands-on volunteers. So it was a good learning experience. And we also have a SIP project grant, which is funding the Lending Library project. Yep.
That's great. It's great to hear, and I just appreciate that Lending Library. As a parent of a child that has special needs as well, it was difficult, because you have to buy all the toys, the sensory, etc., the blankets, etc., to try to see if there's something that could assist that child. So it is good to actually be able to test them out first before you actually, jumped in there with that dollars and cents. That might have been difficult for a parent. So. Councilor Matties?
Thank you for coming. Just a question with regards to the schools. Do you work with the schools at all in terms of some of the additional supports that you would require?
Yeah, so that's where our mentorship model comes in. So we have some, champion families who have been through a lot with the school division and different experts on different topics. So it's more like we would connect people with each other, so that we know who's been through what. Also, we are a member organization of Inclusion Alberta. So when it comes to advocacy in the education realm, we really leave it to them because that's what they do best. So, but we do have ongoing partnerships and good working relationships with Parkland School Division and Evergreen Catholic.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? No. So on behalf of our communities, thank you for the work that you do to support our communities, to make sure our communities are whole and inclusive for everyone, so that we can enjoy it. Actually, I have two friends that I'd like you to talk to, and their names are Mayor Houston and Mayor Shaggis.
We already talked to them.
Make sure that was heard. Yeah, I have two friends that you might want to talk to, and they're Mayor Houston and Mayor Shaggis, in terms of what this organization does for communities in the Tri-Region, to maybe hit them up for a little bit of financial contribution as well. Because I think the work that you guys do here is great, and does provide a lot of inclusion in our communities.
Thank you. We actually did have the opportunity to present to both of them. So
Well, thank you. Hopefully they come up with some funding as well. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 4.4 of our agenda, we now have Mothers Against Drunk Driving, so MAD. Welcome to Chambers again. So Brenda, if you can just sign in and again introduce yourselves to council and the members of the gallery again.
So, I'm Brenda Johnson. I am the president with MAD Parkland Chapter. I'm also the chair of the National Board of Directors for MAD Canada. And with me today is Mackenzie Fregoso. So I want to thank you very much for allowing us to come and present tonight. We just wanted to, after 13 years, to provide you with an update of what MAD Parkland Chapter has actually been up to and integrated into the communities. So as it's customary for all of our MAD meetings, board meetings, gatherings, we start with a mission moment. So we're going to do that with Mackenzie this evening. Part of the MAD family and what the focus of the national organization is to stop impaired driving and to support victims of the violent crime. When we as an organization reference impaired driving, it is no longer just alcohol, it's also drugs. With the legislation of cannabis, and as Alberta is identified as the highest opioid use in North America, it's definitely a factor of impairment behind the wheel. So Mackenzie's with us tonight. She reached out to the MAD family 5 years ago, and Mackenzie will share her story with you as an introduction to MAD Parkland's chapter and the organization's investment in victim support in the region.
So when I was 12 years old, on June 30th, 2014, an impaired driver crossed over the center line, hitting my father, my stepmother, and myself in our minivan. And the car flew into the ditch and instantly caught fire. But with the help of my father and the motorist passing by, they were able to smash the window with a bat and slide me through the broken glass. And as I waited on the side of the highway, I watched my father and my stepmother burn until an ambulance arrived. This accident has done a lot to me. Physically, it separated my clavicle, and I sustained first, second, and third degree burns to my back, hand, wrist, and legs. I received lacerations and developed scar tissue along my abdomen. I also had nerve damage in my knee and my left breast, and consistent physio and neurology appointments due to my post-concussive syndrome that requires me to miss many days of school. But after all of this happened, MAD has helped me by funding my flight and taxi and a spot at the MAD Victims Conference in Ontario each year until I'm 19. And being able to make new friends and meet people who can relate to my situation, all along the chances to volunteer in the community, like Strides for Change and sitting in front of council, and being able to be a part of the annual awareness movie MAD produces, where the victims share their stories and the video is shown to schools across Canada.
Mackenzie just graduated from Spruce Grove Composite High School. We were at her graduation a couple of weeks ago, and she's been accepted into the McEwen Arts program for the fall. So I hear you just rented an apartment.
I did.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Not moving exactly the way, there we go. So Mackenzie was just awarded this past April with the posthumous Commissioner's Commendation of Bravery from the RCMP, received on behalf of her father, David Fregoso, for his actions in saving her life when they were hit by an impaired driver. That was a pretty important occasion. So Mad Parkland has served the region, like I said, for 13 years. As of June 12th, that was our anniversary date. As of June 30th, that was Mackenzie's 5-year anniversary date of her crash. We asked to present to the town today to provide council and administration with an update of what we're doing in the region and to thank you for your ongoing support since the inception of the chapter. The town has been very supportive. Volunteer organizations are facing many challenges these days, particularly with fundraising goals, as well as recruiting volunteers and then retaining them. Mad Parkland has operated now for 13 years, complemented by a committed board with members and volunteers that have assisted the chapter in offering multiple educational and awareness programs and events. And my finger. We have significant partners, as you can see, that allow us to forge forward through grant funding, the provision of gift-in-kind support, participation in events, and giving of time, which is the most important factor that our chapter needs. The Town of Stony Plain Enforcement Services, through the assistance of peace officers, supports the chapter with scheduling and participation in the candy cane check stops, education and awareness events, as well as keeping the chapter informed of criminal activity related to impaired driving in the county and the town and the city, so we can focus on areas of education that are important to town residents. Impaired driving is not only on our roadways, but on boating on the water and in the backcountry with off-highway vehicles. Mad Parkland, through the Alberta Traffic Safety Fund, has been able to provide 911 signage installed on major routes in the county, with the county's support of the installation, and the Mad National Office has supported the chapter with impaired boating information signage, some of which are installed and more on the way that'll be installed in boat launch areas in and around the county. This chapter is actually responsible for 68 impaired boating signages throughout the province, thanks to volunteers. And more on the way. So by the end of this year, we should have about 150 out there. Our partnership with the Yield Association, it's the Youth Initiatives in Education and Lifestyles, provides the chapter additional tools in order to educate our young people in making choices that keep them safe as they begin their driving experience. Everybody, I think, knows Gord Buck and knows his record with the Yield program. Your Dignity Memorial through our local Parkland Funeral Home have been stellar partners, offering their building and facilities to host the annual Red Ribbon campaign launch, offering their multiple locations in the region for fundraising events, such as Mad for Chocolate, Mad for Carnival, and for the first 7 years after the passing of my son, the Remy Elisi Memorial Fundraiser. In the last 3 years, they and we have partnered with the Tim Hortons Stony Plain, supporting an awareness campaign called the Red Band, to encourage designated driver and offer drivers of the vehicles complimentary hot beverages from 8 p.m. at night till 2 a.m. in the morning for the entire month of December. In December 2018, Mad Parkland chapter distributed over 2,000 bracelets. A very successful program this year. Our education and awareness initiatives have been successful. The Legacy of Life program, which we started initially, provided rural schools with display cabinets as well as an initial 1-year supply, of monthly marketing materials to change up in the cabinet to display their own messaging, the youth's own messaging about impaired driving. Students continue to utilize the showcases and create their own messaging as they see fit. We'll be putting up a new Legacy of Life cabinet in our I want to say it's I'm going to lose the name on it, where Parenting for the Future is. So that's where it's going to be in there. As you can see from the list of the initiatives, Mad Parkland chapter participates where there is an organizational fit to message about impaired driving. With the new legislation of MASS, the mandatory alcohol screening that came into effect in December of 2018, the data is showing that impaired driving is not decreasing. Mass has identified in a few short months that it is effective. However, in April, the province reported approximately 350 administrative sanctions and impaired driving charges. And up to May 23rd, there were reported another 285 charges pre the May long weekend. We won't have the balance of those updated stats until our board meeting next week. Our constable, Michael Hibbs, reports every month to us on an update on the provincial statistics. So MAD Parkland chapter has always said, at any time of day, you probably have 1 in 10 impaired drivers on your road. By the time we're completely full our first year of mandatory alcohol screening, we suspect that number is going to rise to about 3 out of 10. The local chapter operates under the strategic direction of MAD Canada, which identifies 4 priorities: to eliminate impaired driving, to provide caring and compassionate services to victims and survivors, to make every Canadian safe from impaired driving through public education initiatives, and to strengthen the organization. We'd encourage you at your leisure to go to MAD.ca, where you can easily find MAD Canada's programming and progress reports on our priorities and access MAD Canada's policy work. I will highlight that we are very proud of our province to take a lead in approval of the 0.05 BAC lower limit and subsequent administrative sanctions that the province has initiated, and the province has also initiated a roadside memorial program to identify crash sites where there been injury or death due to impaired driving. Unfortunately, Mackenzie's crash will not be a roadside memorial, though we're still trying to work on it because they grandfathered it back to 2 years. So the future for MAD Parkland will be to recruit more volunteers so we can continue to offer education and awareness programming. We have initialized a certified volunteer training workshop based on the training guidelines of MAD Canada, and our first workshop was held on June 8th at the Heritage Park Pavilion. We'll continue to offer the workshops biannually, and certainly they were successful the first round, and we're hoping to get more participants in the second round. And recently, we also completed our first series of presentations to the comm classes at the Spruce Grove Composite High School. Our team of Gord Buck and Constable Michael Hibbs and myself created a 70-minute program to present to the comm classes, which we found was very well received and very successful in that it was a lot of interaction with students, not to tell them that they shouldn't drink and drive, but to tell them what to do when they're in a circumstance where they're in a risk circumstance where there's drinking involved, and give them tools to make some good choices about behavior and how they can look after themselves and their health. The hardest thing for them was to say they should phone their parent if they run into a challenge. The second hardest thing was to phone 911 if one of their friends were leaving a party and they knew they were impaired. So we'd need to do a little bit more work around that. We'll also continue to do our Freeze Out Impaired Driving campaign. It's fairly popular in the greater Edmonton area in the summertime, so we stick stickers on freezies and hand them out at charity check stops. And also our Brush Out Impaired Driving, which we use in the winter months with the same idea, sticker on it and give them out. So we spend a lot of our fundraise money on education and awareness programs that are interactive with the community. Our signature school assembly program travels across the country. This year is titled Over the Edge, and it's a powerful dramatization about the tragic consequences of impaired driving. The video ends with testimonials from real-life victims who share their heartbreaking stories with the audience. Mackenzie's been at the end of a school assembly program telling her story. In recent years, the only local school actually to host it is the Woodhaven Junior High. So this year, it is our intention to work with all 3 high schools. We have funding in place, so it wouldn't cost the schools any money to do it. It's just their time allocation to be able to do that. And we know that that's a bit of a challenge for the high schools. So to wrap up here, the most important message today is to say thank you. So without your support, the programs as an organization we engage in could not be possible. Mayor and Council have attended many MAD events over the last 13 years, and we look forward to continuing our relationship with you and with the citizens of the community. So the one thing I like to always say at the end of any presentation or at the beginning is driving is a privilege, it is not a right, and impaired driving is 100% preventable. So this is the end of our presentation. Thank you for having us, and if you have questions, I do my best to answer them.
Okay. Thank you much, Brenda and Mackenzie, for presenting and sharing a little bit of what Matt has done in our communities for the last 13 years. Mackenzie, not only are you lovely within, as your tattoo says, but you also lovely outside as well. So thank you for coming, and thank you for being so strong to share your story and being a role model for other survivors to help them through. I just can't imagine what you had to go through to be here today, but thank you very much for being that strength that you have. I've said many times, even through a lot of MAD events that I've attended with Brenda, is that drunk driving is 100% preventable. All accidents from that is a choice. It was a wrong choice, and it could be 100% preventable. And it is sad that we have this information, we have the communication skills, and we have technology to educate and to train people, but yet the numbers continue to rise, which is very sad to me. But I am very glad that Mothers Against Drunk Driving is here to continue to spearhead that, to spread that message, and hopefully one day we can reduce that down to 0. So thank you for your work. Members of council, open up for questions and comments. Councilor Plechko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a bit of a comment. I want to echo a little bit of what Mr. Choi was just talking about here. I've had many opportunities to sit with you, Brenda, and hear your story. And again, I think it takes a lot of courage for both of you to sit up here and do the work that you do. It's very humbling for us that are sitting up here today to listen to people that can talk about experiences that are caused by the bad choices. Impaired driving is not something that is a good choice, and it's something that everybody can prevent. So great work at what you do within our community to both of you, and continue to tell the stories because they're very important. They're not nice stories to hear, but they do tell a story and paint an outcome that maybe people somewhere along the way will listen to and quit driving, because there is always a better choice. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Matthews?
Your Worship, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being a great youth ambassador to, and really, it's such an important story to tell, because that's what allows people to understand. Just giving information sometimes does not help, but a story will let people, it'll stay with them. And so thank you very much for doing that. I have a question. So it's with regards to why is incidence not reducing? And so going with that is who or what groups are still drunk driving? Like where's the highest incidence of this?
I would suggest that it's not a matter of not reducing. I would suggest that because of the administrative sanctions now, they're just finding more through the mandatory alcohol screening.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And typically, we have a chart we kind of use at MAD Canada, and someone could drive 1,500 times before they'll actually kill or injure someone on a road themselves or someone else. So that stat is very, very real. It's in the policy papers that you'll see on the MAD-CA. Mm-hmm. And it's a situation of everybody likes to be in control of their own lives and not be told to do anything differently. If they can just understand to separate the drinking from we're not a prohibitionist organization. No. They need to separate the drinking from the driving. You don't allow people running down the road with a gun in their hand, and yet an impaired person behind the wheel is a weapon.
So we are changing behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of the groups that are still, you're seeing basically being stopped and
they're an older generation.
Pardon?
They're an older generation. The younger generation are turning more towards the cannabis, which is also a little bit of a challenge for us, because the legalization part of it is sometimes it says to young people it's okay.
Okay.
So our education now around cannabis is to say there's health-related risks with it, but you still have to separate the drinking and the drug use.
And cannabis is, I think, harder to, yeah, so people are using that a lot more. And alcohol now,
And you see it, yeah, in our
all
own.
the time.
Okay, thanks.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I'd like to say I feel sorry. Maybe that's not right. I feel for your story. But personally, I have the exact opposite story. I don't have any close friends that I can point to, and I would like to say appreciatively, that's on the hard work of decades of your guys' organization changing attitudes. So, thank you in that regard. Just the comment, that's that.
Thank you. Any other comments? So again, on behalf of our community, I personally want to thank you for the great work that Matt has done in our communities. Hopefully we continue to bring the trend down so that there are 0 deaths or accidents caused by drunk driving or impaired driving. In any case, as you mentioned, that cannabis is now a kind of growing concern. That impaired driving is not tolerated and it's not warranted. And I think you mentioned it really, really well. Like, we're not against drinking, we're not against doing things. It's like you have to enjoy it in reasonable fashion, and then don't put others and yourself at harm after you do that. I think that's the biggest message. So again, Brenda, thank you for being here because I know what you have gone through, and definitely our region has benefited from your sorrow because you have been championing this for a long time to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody else again.
Thanks
So
for the
thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, Members of Council, moving on to our next presentation. It is 4.5. This is Stony Plain Public Library presenting the 2018 annual report. So welcome, Allison, and please again sign in. There's a sign-up sheet there for you to sign into, and again introduce yourself to members of council and the gallery behind you.
Good evening. My name is Allison Stewart. I am the director of the Stony Plain Public Library. Thank you very much to council and administration for having us here. And we'd also, of course, like to say thank you to council and administration for all the support we get from you throughout the years as well. I am very excited to be here. I hope you're not bored hearing about the library all night long. It is actually very, it's very reassuring to hear that the people that we do work with are happy to talk about the impact that we're having. One of the biggest struggles we have as a library is to demonstrate the impact that we have in community. So of course you all have the annual report in your packages. It's got all the numbers and everything in it. But sometimes it's really difficult to translate those numbers into what does that mean? What does that look like in our community? So our PowerPoint presentation today would like to expand a little bit on that type of outcomes and those impacts. So we talk a lot about libraries being community hubs, and the front page of our annual report is part of the advocacy that we're doing with the help of Yellowhead Regional Library and some other libraries, not just in Alberta, but across the country as well. Public libraries tend to be places that do a lot of different things, and we like to think of ourselves as capacity builders in a lot of different areas. Entertainment and enjoyment, of course, that's fairly obvious, but what might be less obvious, and I apologize to Councillor Loy and Mayor Choi who heard me talk about this at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, is economic development. Libraries do a lot for that in the community. Cultural integrity and regional identity as well. Stony Plain always recognizes itself and has always treasured its contribution and its value of the ways in which we produce culture in our community. And we like to believe that the library helps to contribute to that as well. As Amy and Amanda pointed out, social inclusion in libraries is a huge issue. We're one of the very few places where anybody can just walk in and everybody gets treated exactly the same way as everybody else. We do, in our current place of business, have a lot of problems with our built environment. That's not uncommon, and that is one of the things that Cohesive Community Foundations has been working to work on. And we're really excited about the new library build, giving us an opportunity to expand our ability to be an inclusive space. Cognitive and literacy, of course, that's just standard for libraries. Health and wellness, though, is also one of those things that doesn't seem immediately obvious, but a lot of that ties into each other. And what we learn, too, is that none of these things exist in silos. A lot of these things are interrelated. So social inclusion and health and wellness and engaged citizens and safer communities and economic development and cultural integrity and all of those things, they're all connected. They don't exist as silos, so it's very exciting that public libraries exist to bring all of those things together. So I just wanted to do a few things on each one of those to expand a little bit. For engaged citizens and safer community, a lot of the work that we do is with youth. The Teen Advisory Group does a lot of work in the library. They meet once, actually they meet twice because we give them free food. So they like to meet twice a month. But they plan the programs for teens in the library. So these group of teenagers come together. They help us decide what books we're going to purchase. They help us decide what CDs we're going to purchase because we are old and we don't know what kids are reading or what they're listening to. So they help us out, keep our collections fresh for them. But they also help us plan the programming, and they also deliver and design the programming as well. The library does budgets to support them in terms of that, but they do the work. So there's a lot of leadership capacity happening in the Teen Advisory Group. There's also that happening with the My Path program. I'm not sure if Natasha Rilchik has presented to council yet. It's an alternative education program, which they do traditional schooling in the morning, and then in the afternoons, they're out and about with the various community partners. And the library is very excited to be one of those community partners. And the focus of the programming that we do with that is civic engagement and citizenship. And how do we exist as citizens in our community, and how do we do better things? And one of those, a lot of that is intergenerational work, where a lot of the time they're going to the long-term care facilities and developing connections between residents and youth, and a lot of that goes to that social inclusion as well. So a lot of what we do doesn't necessarily happen within the four walls of the library, but it's also out and about in the community as well. So entertainment and enjoyment just happens. Of course, one of the favorite things at the library is the train. We have been told in no uncertain terms that the train has to move with us to the new library building. My understanding is, and this was before my time, is that we had to pop a window out to get the train out. So I guess we're gonna have to do that to move it into the new space. I don't know, I'm hoping we'll have some double doors somewhere to get it into the new space, but it is an incredibly popular thing. A lot of the programs that we have are community-led. For example, our craft circle, again, that speaks to that inclusion as well. Again, none of these things exist by themselves. They tend to be feeding into different areas as we go. Economic development, some of the things that we do, we've been supporting the junior achievement to provide them with a space for them to do their community market so they can sell their wares. We've done that as a partnership back in December with Parkland School District and the high school. So the kids have a different place to come and sell their products. Learn to Drive is a really important one from our perspective. The pass rate for the learner's exam is very low in Alberta right off the bat. The Learn to Drive program was developed in conjunction with Alberta Safety and Traffic and a librarian up in Swan Hills. And now the kits are available in public libraries across the province. But it's a hands-on, interactive way for study sessions for kids to make that a little bit easier for them to pass that exam. One of the biggest things that we've been doing, and again, apologies to Councillor Loy and Mayor Choi, is exam administration. We started tracking our exam administration around midway through 2015, because prior to that, we had just been doing it for free. It is enormously labor intensive for our staff, so we started charging for it. We just increased the price, I believe, in 2017, and we will probably be increasing that price again in 2020. Currently, we charge $15 for an exam administration. We're not just one of the least expensive places to have an exam administration. We are also one of the only places where you can have an exam administered. We're currently signing the paperwork for Athabasca University. Currently, if you're an Athabasca University student, if you want your exam proctored, you have to travel to Edmonton. If you're in this area, they have, of course, exam places in Calgary as well. But we're working out an arrangement with them that we'll be able to proctor their exams in Stony Plain also. But it's not just standard universities. For example, we have a standing arrangement monthly with Sting Enterprises, which is based out of BC, and we do the exams for security guards twice a month at Stony Plain for the people who are taking their training. With the advent of distance learning and the rise of computers, a lot of people in our community and the outlying areas are taking courses from post-secondary educations and other institutions. For example, Sting Enterprises is a private company. It's not a post-secondary institution, but they still administer an exam, and there are a lot of people in the community who are doing that. And then how that contributes to the economic development is that a lot of people are undergoing retraining in our community. As we know, oil and gas and agriculture sectors, currently, they're a bit iffy. A lot of people are looking to the future and they are retraining themselves. A lot of it has to do with job loss. We have always provided computer access for people who have to do various computer-related things, like a lot of people have to do their safety, OHS, WMIS, all of those things. A lot of companies, if you're in oil and gas, you are required to upgrade that every year. We get a lot of people coming in and they're doing that in our library. And they're just doing that. They're able to do that for free because it's just using our computers to be able to run that exam. So I did want to share this. I try not to have giant long texts, but this was a letter that was delivered to Parkland County, Stony Plain, and Spruce Grove libraries. And this is a woman who lost her job, had to find full employment, and they found this in the libraries here in Duffield, Wabamun, and Spruce Grove, and Stony Plain. And this speaks a little bit to Yellowhead Regional Library and the support in terms of how none of us exist in isolation. We are all part of a larger network. So Stony Plain Library does a lot of great things, but we are able to do those great things because we are supported by a network, like by a regional library network. We do a lot of partnerships with the other libraries, but having a lot of the background things taken off our plate and done by Yellowhead allows us to do some of these things that are more directly connected and related to our community. So it was very exciting to get this letter because it definitely talks about how we impact people and how their lives are actually changed by public libraries in their community. We're very proud to work with the town and various community partners every year for Alberta Culture Days. We are still waiting to hear whether or not we're getting grant funding this year. It's because there hasn't been a budget passed, so all of the municipality, all of the departments are in a bit of an uproar, but hopefully we'll hear from them soon. But we also contribute to the community as well. So Meridian Heights in the French immersion, a lot of what happens there for a lot of parents, because they don't speak French in their home, the only place the children do speak French is in school. So by providing opportunities for a French fun club where kids can have after-school programming in French, we give that opportunity for kids to be able to practice that language. It's also a very exciting program because we access the SKIP grant funding, and we don't partner with, but we usually engage with a student from Faculté Saint-Jean to run the French Fun Club. So we don't just provide that opportunity, we also provide a learning opportunity for a student who's usually in education to develop and all those, and then they get a $1,000 bursary through the SKIP internship program. So we try and do a lot of programming where it's not just the community, but there's external benefits as well. So there's a lot of internship and a lot of leadership opportunities for people. Parkland Poets started out because our current poet laureate came into Stony Plain Library and said, I'm tired of driving into Edmonton. Can we do something? So we worked with them and we developed this, and we're very proud that because of some of the work we did, Stony Plain now has a poet laureate. And I'd like to point out that neither Parkland County nor Spruce Grove have one, so yay us. Just had to throw that in there. Social inclusion, of course, a lot of things, cohesive community parent days, but the Christmas mitten tree is a big issue. We donate all of the things that people do to the Kinsman Food Bank, and there I know they're in front of council with the food hampers that they do. We get hundreds and hundreds of blankets and toques and hats and mitts for people. The chess club is, again, a community-led opportunity. A gentleman came in and wanted to provide this opportunity for people here in Stony Plain, and it gives people a chance to get out of the house and be able to participate in activities that, you know, they might not otherwise get to do. We do a lot of cognitive and literacy. I don't have time to go through it all. But it is really important. Down in the bottom left-hand corner is the little free library that we work with Alberta Beach, Onaway, and Rich Valley Libraries at Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation. One of the biggest problems of providing services on reserve is the fact that they have little transportation, and traditional library services don't work. But a little free library where you can just take a book, bring it back, take a book, bring it back, works perfectly in that community. We restock that shelf once a month. We all take turns going out there. We use some of the donated items that we use as some of our discarded items. But the province had provided funding via regional library systems for services on reserve. So the initial cost of setting up that library in terms of purchasing the materials and the shelving and all that was funded via a provincial grant that was delivered through Yellowhead Regional Library Systems. So we do a fair bit of health and wellness. We partnered with AHS for a health and nutrition fair last fall, but Senior Strength and Seniors Yoga are ongoing programs at the library. We're revisiting Senior Strength because there is one happening at the Seniors Drop-In Center on the same days now, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're going to do that as a pilot project on Mondays. The people who have attended have said they would still like to have another session because it's social as well as physical. We'll see how that goes. If attendance drops because it's available somewhere else in the community, then there's no reason for us to do it, and that just frees up our program room for something else. We do continually revisit our programming and adapt it to what's happening. Prior to when we first initially started providing Senior Strength, there wasn't a place for our seniors to go. And yes, there are lots of gyms, et cetera, in the community. But if you are a senior with mobility issues, those are not exactly spaces where you might feel comfortable walking in and doing your small workout when you're surrounded by very fit and very agile people. So that also fits in terms of social inclusion as well, creating opportunities and spaces where everybody, regardless of their physical spaces and abilities, have opportunities to be fit and healthy and participate. So all of that means that we work with a lot of different communities. I know this is Councillor Bennett's favorite slide. She made very sure I included it in the annual report. It's essentially a network map. The yellow dots are the different programs that we do within the community. The blue dots are the various different community organizations with whom we work. If there are, that's basically wraps up my presentation. If anybody has any specific questions regarding the annual report with all the numbers in it, I do have that available and I can pop it in and we can put it up on the big screen as well. Or if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It is great to see the amount of work and the inclusion that's happening in the public library. Like I said many times, that library is no longer just bricks and mortars with books in it. It is a community gathering area, and you obviously proved that tonight with your presentation and the stuff that I've seen there coming in and out of the library itself. Members of council, any questions? Councilor Pletchko.
I think Councilor Lloyd was, so I'll go after him.
You're closer to me, so we'll go Councilor Pletchko first.
Okay, sorry, Bruce, I tried. Thank you for coming out tonight, greatly appreciate it. I do have a couple of questions, though. If we turn to page, where's the first one? page 43 of 54, which is numbers again. I noticed that people using the library by year, so from 2014 to 2018, we will talk about. From 2014 to 2016, we've seen a pretty good increase in people using the library. However, over the past few years, we've also seen that significant gain, a significant backwards. And I'm just wondering what you see happening with the library as to why people using the library by year over the last few has been a decline when we're in the economy that we're in today.
There's a lot of different answers to that, and one of which is also the rise of e-resources. We do get a lot of people who we see them once a year to renew their library card, and then the rest of the time they're not coming into the physical building. They're just using the library card to access the electronic resources that they can get anywhere they want to with an internet access. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is space. Sometimes you just come in and people will turn around and walk right out again because we are just so busy that they're not there. And sometimes a lot of it depends, I hate to say this, but really a lot of it does depend on the weather. If we do have a really bad winter, we will see our numbers decline because people tend to go out less in the wintertime when it's really cold and snowy and blowing. So we have ups, we have downs, it goes up, it goes down, and it all depends on what's happening in the community as well.
Just to follow up to that question then, so I go to page 44 of 54, which is your memberships as of December 31st, and I noticed that from the past 2 years, from 2016 to 2017, we had a small increase. However, from 2017 to 2018, which you were talking about, portion of it, I don't see a great increase in membership through that aspect of it all. And I'm just wondering what you see the trend being there as well.
That could be a number of different items, one of which is being people who have access to their library cards from other libraries. So more and more libraries across the province are starting to reduce their membership fees. So some of them might be getting their library cards somewhere else, depending on where they are. And some of it could just be, I'm trying to find that page, sorry, my pages don't match with yours. We're looking for membership fees? Right here.
Yeah.
There we
it
go.
says memberships at December 31st. You're
Um,
right there.
So we went down and then we went, actually, I'm looking at memberships of December 31st and I see an increase. We had 10,340 as December 30th, 2017, and 10,391 for 2018.
Right, it's a very small increase.
It is a very small
comparative to
increase.
what we've seen the 3 years prior.
For sure.
So I'm just wondering what that trend is when
Well,
you talk about
the
more people using.
2014 to 2015 jump was the year we eliminated membership fees. So that will skew that. So 2014, we eliminated membership fees in April of 2014. So there was a significant increase from 2013 to 2014. And then 2015, you see the first full jump. And the other reason is that it's at this point, it's possible that everybody who would like a library card at this point has one. That isn't to say we don't continually work and connect with new people. We're at the trade fair every year, or not the trade fair, excuse me, the two registration fairs, the one at the Tri-Leisure Center in August and the one at the Heritage Pavilion in February. And with the new technology, we are able to sign people up electronically at those fairs. So we are at a couple different conferences. I don't believe there's going to be a Rural Women's Conference in February this year. That was my last understanding. But there will be an Adventures in Aging Conference. And it continually amazes me. We've been there every year for the last 7 or 8 years. And people still come up and go, I didn't know libraries did that. So we do find value in being there as well. So we do work at it. But again, we have 17,000 people in Stony Plain. And about 2/3 of that 10,000 is Stony Plain memberships. It's not a bad average.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Loy, please.
Thank you. Allison, I never get tired of the library reports. I
you,
think it's a
Councillor Lloyd.
really good news story for our community, inside our community, but also all the other people who take part of it there, whether it be Spruce Grove or Parkland. And you, Joanne, there, thank you as being the chair, and all the people that are really, I would say, super dedicated. And it really bothers me. I hear sometimes that, well, libraries are dying. And I said, well, that may be, but you just should come to ours because it's not. And I look at the stats there and I see 2017 people attending. You had a 30% increase over last year's, or from 2017 to 2018, which I think you can contribute to the next slide. You went from 193 to 228 in number of programs. So I believe that's the correlation there. So who's ever developing this and expanding it and looking for it, I encourage you to keep. There'll be a saturation point, of course. But I don't mean saturation in size, because we'll have the new library, but there's just only so many things that a board really can do. But congratulations to you all, and I think it's a tremendous asset to our community. So thanks kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. So, thank you, Allison, for coming. Just sort of going back to Councillor Palechko, and in regards to the memberships, how do we account for attrition of memberships? Just when they don't renew them, we just cross them off the list, or?
Yellowhead Regional Library actually does that for us every year. They just go through, and any card that has, we don't just get rid of the cards that are expired. If there hasn't been any activity on a card for a year, then it gets purged out annually.
Okay, and then just a second question, if I could. I also just have to mention, I too really like this community partners diagram. I like that. If we could just now break that into a pie chart based on funding, be perfect.
Oh, good luck with that. It would be a very small pie chart with well, actually, that's not true. We do apply for a lot of grants. So, for example, the Nakota language storybooks is funded with the Provincial Aboriginal Services Grant. I'm just trying to take a peek here. What else is on there? Mental health navigation community compass, that's we are an achieving community together that we fortunately are just a contributing partner to that, where we don't have to worry about the funding for that. Adventures in Aging Conference, First Five Coalition, those are funded, actually the town funds the Adventures in Aging Conference annually as well, and it's very well received. Alberta Culture Days, of course, is a grant. The French Fun Club, as I mentioned already, we apply for the SKIP internship and use that funding. The Family Games Night is a partnership with the University of Alberta Education. Part of that is because games are one of the core foundation for literacy, and technology is wonderful and it does great things, but there's always a double-edged sword with technology, and with more and more families being engaged more in their smartphones and their devices, the Family Games Night gives families an opportunity to connect over board games, which have been demonstrated to be very, very powerful in helping develop early literacy skills for kids in terms of especially like counting and problem solving and all of those things. A lot of these other ones, again, we do a lot of grant writing to fund this.
So sorry, just one more if I could. Just going back to our the opening page and the community hub, and the 7 titles around the outside there. Just curious, which ones do you feel we're doing a good job covering? Which ones do you think we could work on? Which ones? I mean, 7 things are a lot of ways to divide yourself, so I imagine it must be a struggle to hit them all. I'm just curious which ones you think we're doing good on and which ones we could work on.
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, a lot of them are overlap. So it doesn't necessarily, we have to have a program for social inclusion, a program for cognitive literacy, a different program, and so on. So most of our programming is very intentional, and we try and I hate to use this word, it's an awful word, but we try to check as many of the boxes as we can with a single program. So senior strength is social inclusion, physical literacy, health and wellness, and entertainment and enjoyment. It's also an engaged and safer community because if we have our seniors are more active, then they're less likely to need healthcare or take falls and spills and so on. So if I was going to say one of the ones where we would work, where there is potential for us to do more on, I would say the economic development part. I feel like a lot of the resources we have, particularly electronic resources, are not as familiar with a lot of the smaller businesses in our community, particularly the home-based businesses, which is one of the reasons why we try to connect really well with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that we do presentations to the Chamber of Commerce to highlight the different electronic resources that home-based businesses can access for free. And that I would not necessarily see as being a burden on us in terms of staffing. That's just a question of going out and, well, it is a burden on staffing, but it's just more of me going out and talking to people and meeting them and say, did you know that we can do that for you with your library card, which is free, and that you have access to all of these different things that can help make your business a little easier to run. So I do think that's one of the things that we could definitely improve on.
That's good.
Yep, that's good, thank you.
Councilor Mandy's?
Allison, love the library. Question is with regards to, and I have to read this because it's almost a paragraph. Government of Canada, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, Digital Literacy Exchange Program, Stony Plain is listed on the website as one of the communities that are funded, or the libraries that are funded. The ACT Social Lab Digital Outreach Initiative will deliver basic to intermediate skills training in West Central Alberta, participants to learn internet navigation, cloud-based storage use, collaboration tools, and stay safe online. They fund up to $300,000, wondering what the funding is, what exactly we're doing. And then secondly, by the way, great that there's a direct link to the library and then a direct link to you, and I just love it.
So the reason that was not in the annual report is, well, first of all, it's 2019, not 2019, but also because the embargo on that was lifted on Thursday of last week. Literally was not allowed to talk about it until the embargo was lifted, which was last Thursday. So I believe that's probably when you got that, when that notification went out. Digital Literacy Exchange Program, we've received about $310,000 over the next 4 years, which included fiscal year 1 ended March 31st of 2019. We're in the middle, well, we're starting fiscal year 2, so it will take us to fiscal year 4, I believe, will be March 31st, 2022. We're partnering with Tricala, Braden Institute, and Parkland School District to deliver core digital literacy foundation skills, which are each different partner has developed their own different programming for it. We've currently used the funding to purchase the technology that we're going to need to deliver that, so laptops, iPads, a Wi-Fi hub, so that when we can deliver the programming out in various areas where there isn't any Wi-Fi. The library itself won't be delivering any of the programs until we're in our new space, which will be fall of 2020. We just don't have the space right now to do that. So those different community partners will be starting to deliver the programming in fall of 2019. So this fall, we have a project coordinator, which we included in the funding, because I do not have the capacity to take that on. The grant was enormously time consuming. Even with 3 different partners at the table, the library did the vast majority of the work to get the grant. That's why it's specifically noted under the library. We are the holding organization for these funds. But I just, again, so one of the biggest things is to have that community coordinator who will be doing most of that work. She'll be doing most of the promoting this fall. A lot of it is geared towards for people who are English language learners. And working with Tricala, we hope to also connect with people who are adult literacy learners. So the purpose of the funding is to increase the digital literacy skills of Canadians who are under or unemployed and who are traditionally struggling to find work, to make them more employable in a digital economy. So as we move into a more digital age, there are a lot of people who might get left behind, and the purpose of this funding is to, at the very bare minimum, give them core skills, and that includes internet literacy skills, navigating the internet, information literacy, like evaluating the information on the internet, plus moving into cloud-based computing as well, because more and more companies and businesses are moving into the cloud-based sector. So the core, most of the library's programming will be focusing on cloud-based computing skills. We also will be doing some work on video and Photoshop, those types of skills as well, working with some of the other community partners that are signed on for that.
Thank you.
Does that answer all of your questions?
Fully.
Thanks.
Thank you, Council Matters. Any other questions, comments? So, yeah, I just have to say thank you very much. I actually I don't know if I'm stalking you or you're stalking me, because I kind of grew up in the library system. I remember when it was at the community center, and then I spent many summers when it was at the Parkland building here, and then I spent a little bit of time down at Forest Green Plaza. So as an immigrant coming to Canada, English was not my first language, so it was hard to communicate, and the library did allow me the opportunity to communicate, read books, and take stuff off, so which I would say the library had a hand in raising me and, allowing me to be where I am today. So the library does provide a lot of services and programs for many, many of our residents. I think you mentioned earlier that the library is probably the only space that we have in our community that is socially inclusive. It doesn't matter what economics scale you're at, if you can afford to come to the library or not. With Town Council approving free memberships back in 2014, that made it 100% accessible for everybody in our community. And thank you for yourself and the work that the board and the staff do to make sure that our community is provided for and inclusive so that our community remains strong with that. So, thank you very much. Just one question. When do you plan to have the Stony Plain Public Library opened?
If you keep telling me fall 2020.
2020 for the opening of the public library. And I think I remember I'll be following that there as well. I think about 8 years ago I said we needed a new library. So it is a long process.
It is.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members of the council, that ends our presentations. And again, to the members of the gallery, thank you for staying for the presentations. Usually everybody leaves right away and doesn't stay for anything else. Okay, moving on, we have one business item, and that's just for information. So 5.1 is the Stony Plain Public Library to accept for information. So Councillor Matties, please.
That Town Council accept the Stony Plain Public Library 2018 Annual Report presentation for information.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from council? No. That was a great presentation, and I look forward to continuing the good work that the library does, and definitely the grand opening in 2020. Thank you. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to council information and council discussion items. We'll start with Councillor Matties, please.
I have one comment, and it was with regards to the FCSS presentation to Parkland County. I was just reading some notes that I received today, and one of the questions that was asked to the presenters was, they were quite surprised with regards to the over contribution of the town of Stony Plain. and whether that was sustainable. And it kind of surprised me because I was surprised that they weren't aware of the over contribution or the size of the contribution. And just just wanted to bring that up today, that I felt that it was great that the presentation was made and that you had asked, the mayor has asked to have a separation of the contributions so that people are aware of what's being offered, and we want to make sure that our partners are aware of what we are doing as a community to support various initiatives.
Okay. And good comment. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I think that goes back to something that Councillor Loy had said earlier is every corporate plan, this council has a choice to decide what to fund, what not to fund. And I think this council and previous councils have decided to fund our community because we believe in the ability to fund our community, which is better than to have it not be funded, and therefore we have more expenses on the tail end of stuff, whereas we can be preventative medicine. So I think it has. Anything else to add?
No.
Okay. Councillor Loy?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Very briefly, citizenship on July 1st was again very well attended, outstanding, a great event. And I think we should really be proud of the fact that we continue to have this in our community. I don't know of any other communities outside, let's say, where they have it in Edmonton or Calgary that have it in this province. So I think it's a real feather in our cap for that. Two other things, I happen to notice the RCMP building being built, and it has the word police written across the front of it. I'm wondering there's no crest for the amount of police on the building. Is there an intention to have that crest mounted on there? And will there be outside signage as well that's not on the building but on the premises that the traditional just says Royal Canadian Mounted Police? And one other question after that. Thank you.
Okay.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy. My understanding is the identification of what the building is has been accepted by the RCMP, and they've set the standard for that. So we will have a flag flying. The RCMP flag will be flying outside the building, along with the Canadian flag and the provincial flag. So there's three flag poles. None of the municipal flags will be flying at that particular detachment. So it'll just be RCMP, Canada, and Alberta. With respect to an identifying piece, I can look into that for you, but I believe they might have some RCMP items there. The RCMP is coming in at the end of July to do their fit up with all the stuff that is RCMP specific. So that might be included in their scope of work and not the scope of work of Elliston.
Okay, I guess being more specifically, all the detachments have the crest. Yep. That's what I'm talking about. So I would ask, I talked to the Sergeant Major on it, and he was not clear. So I'm just bringing that up for the...
And again, Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy, RCMP come in and do their own fit up of all of their stuff. So I don't believe that Elliston, it's within their scope. So if there's a crest that goes on the side of the building, my understanding would be that would be the RCMP's staff that would come out and complete that task.
Thank you. And one final question. The name change has been approved to Parkland. Are they going to wait until they move into the new building before starting to utilize that name? Or is there an official date that's the new name?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy, we haven't received any official communications that have indicated that Parkland detachment from the federal government has been accepted. However, all the press releases that are going out right now are using Parkland. So whether our local detachment has chosen to use that name and put it out into the general population, or whether the federal government has approved that and just haven't sent the correspondence to us to say that it's been approved. My understanding is they're starting to use that name prior to the building opening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. I'm just wondering if the grading of our
community roads has actually been established yet this year. A number of roads, including Range Road 12, within our community are substantially in need of a grader, and I'm just wondering if that's been established yet.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Palechko, I do not know the schedule for the grading of gravel roads. I will look into that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, I'm just wondering if you can, administration can tell me what the process is for people, individuals, businesses, when they come to our community to planning and they come with an idea and they get told no. What is their process for getting that next step? And is there a process for that next step?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Palechko, I guess I would need more context to properly answer the question. Typically, if it's a planning and development related question, our staff work with them upstairs to try to find solutions to whatever their desires are, or to give them, I guess, options what will work within regulations. And that is the approach we try to take upstairs.
So how, once that decision has been made and it's still a no, what is the process for the individual company and or individual to have that heard here, or what is that next process? Does it go to the CAO? Where does it go?
I guess to answer the question, I have to know exactly the circumstance or what type of development you're talking about, or what is the regulation that's at the problem, or, I mean, there may be many things that might happen. So I think perhaps we could have a conversation offline about that, or, yeah.
Yeah, I'll hazard a guess at that as well, Councillor Palechko, and to the general manager. So council sets our bylaws and the way that we operate in the town of Stony Plain and the community, and the staff is to implement that. So if our bylaws and land use does not allow a certain development or something, well, then definitely talk to the staff. If there's something, a way around it, then good. If there's not, then again, approach the town manager, and then hopefully that comes back to council, because then it's a council's choice to have to change the bylaws or change the regulations to allow that. And if we see fit, yes. If we see not, then we don't. But there was a reason why we adopted those certain bylaws and procedures in the first place. So we might have to revisit it as time goes on, because things do change in our community.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at, is as our community is changing, obviously things are going to change within the community. We have set policies that are strict that we have put in place, but there's maybe a need for that to go beyond what our policies are today. What would that look like? And I guess that's a discussion that we can have a little bit further. So yes, it is just an opportunity for us when we're having engaged conversations to be able to let them know that no doesn't mean it's the end of the world, that there is options.
Yes. So no means what council has approved. Staff are following that they can't do that. They don't have the authority to override council. So that conversation needs to continue with the town manager and then council at later point.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'll maybe offer some comment on this one too, and I guess I'll speak, I mean, fairly clearly here. It frankly will depend on the nature of the proposal. Like, again, without no one's, real context, I know that our staff will probably answer a lot of questions no when someone's asking about, I mean, how tall can the fence be on a side yard? Again, to be straight, I mean, that's a no, and it's usually, that's what it'll be. We wouldn't be, that's not hitting into my office about a fence height, and I wouldn't expect it to. And it probably wouldn't come back to council unless we saw a, major uptick in the request for 10-foot fences in particular areas, right? So, I mean, that's on the low end. I'd say that's like a low end inquiry that probably gets denied, and probably some conversation. And then I know in my own experience anyway, generally the applicant will say, okay, well, I guess it's 6-foot fence for this area or what have you, right? I mean, you move up the line to more complex stuff. Yeah, those will usually end up in a manager's hands or in the general manager's hands, and or on their desk or whatever you want to call it, and some interpretation or some acknowledgement of extenuating circumstances can happen, and maybe there's a dialogue there that how can we make this work, and then I mean a further filtered few, if you want to call it that, or another filter ends up onto my desk or the CAO's desk for further interpretation, and or are we seeing enough of these, or is this significant enough that it needs to be brought forward to council? So, how do things end up in the council chambers? It's going to typically be either something on the smaller end that is coming up a lot, and that's when you'll see us bringing in, administrative proposed changes to zoning bylaws and so on and so forth. And so that's sometimes how it'll go. Then on what I would consider to be, larger items of clarification of past council direction, those ones can end up being brought forward into the council chambers for a vote on whatever it may be, whether it's zoning or land use planning amendments or what have you. And again, at this point in time, those judgments will be made, or those contemplations will be made. Oftentimes, what would end up being something along some form of a development constraint that may be changing. And the lens will often be, on an economic development side, is this something that council may need to review because the rule was good 4 years ago or 7 or 3 or 2 or what have you, but maybe it needs to be reconsidered. And I think I've seen probably half a dozen of those in the last, in the time that I've been here, where it's been a contemplation of a maybe shift in direction. So I'll leave it at that, Your Worship. There's a number of no's, so to speak, that are frankly fairly small, fairly, I don't want to say low level, but that's what the zoning bylaw is for. And unless we saw a rapid uptick on certain ones, then we would bring the whole bylaw back, but we wouldn't be coming into chambers, because such and such or some individual doesn't want to have a 6-foot fence, they want a 7-foot fence. I'll leave it at that, Your Worship.
And that's exactly why, this year we're updating our MDP. Even that whole document is a 25 to 30 year vision. Well, we're not going to wait 25 to 30 years to update it. That's why every 5 years we revisit it and we make small minor changes to it to kind of bring it back up to today's current standard. And then in that time frame, then we do the whole big plan again to see what we are.
Just one further question.
Your Worship, just to supplement, so on October 28th, we do have planned to bring LUB amendments to council. So they will be things that we've noticed in the last year or so that would be applicable to be rethought of or give a chance to have a look at it. So that is coming October.
Okay, thank you. And just one further question. With the month of June passing by with heavy rain, I'm just wondering if we have a status update on the multiple construction that we have in our community, where we're at, how far behind we are, what are we anticipating. We're going into the 1st of July, anticipating another 2 weeks of rain, I think is what the forecast kind of stalls for. So just a bit of an update as to the progression of what has been started and ultimately stalled.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Palechko, so the Rotary Park Entrance Road started today and is not behind schedule. It is on schedule. The Heritage Park Road is finished, so that is one under completion. The downtown project is not behind schedule as of today, so our contractors are doing well with minimizing any impact of the weather. And those are the only projects we have underway at this time. There are 2 projects about to kick off, including for both the JP2 school servicing and the Stony Plain Central school servicing. So they will be starting shortly. So they have not been impacted as of yet.
So those 2, the other project I'm referring to is 779. Okay. That is not our project, but is deemed by most of our residents that it is our project. So I'm just looking for a bit of an update as to where that sits. I get that, the project may have a bit of a delay because of the decision to move forward with that road and some of the tendering process that went on there. I'm just wondering where we sit status-wise with the government getting their road done, that people believe that it's ours because multiple people within our community have voiced their concern that it will not get done this year and is far behind. So I'm just wondering if we know where it actually sits.
Okay. So has AT provided any updates on the status of 779?
Your Worship, I don't have any official update on the project as far as completion. However, in speculating, I think it's safe to assume that the the project schedule is at great risk right now. But that is not an official position of Alberta Transportation. I know they're working hard on options and completing the project, and we're doing the best we can to work with them.
Anything else? That's everything. Okay. Councillor Meyer, anything?
Just two. Sure, I'll try to keep them short. So just in relation to Mr. Bacher's presentation today, I think it's a very important, it's an important question to be constantly asking ourselves how to drive attraction to our community. And so I don't know what else to say there. I appreciate his coming in and his
his vision.
Or his vision, yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So anyhow, that's something I think is important that we keep in mind always. But I'd also like to tell a little story about getting to work the pancake breakfast in Spruce Grove at Jubilee Park. And anyhow, I had a good chance to speak with Dave Oldham, who gave us a hard time, or gave me a hard time, and said, well, don't you know, we have to come help you with your guys' Farmers' Days. And then actually what it kind of got me thinking about was the other week's Indigenous Days and how nice it was that they invited everybody around the region to their event. And it occurred to me that we probably didn't get an invite to Jubilee Park, which is fine because you can't invite yourself to things, but it did make me think, do we extend our invitations? So for example, first night, that's kind of our big fireworks thing. Do we extend an invite to, the tri-region?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one I can't answer, 100% accurately right now. I would be going by recollection. I know that, we have some events where we will, that would have like automatic invites going out to. And invites meaning our EA will often contact theirs and say, heads up or whatever, this event's happening on such and such day, please extend to your council. And it would be considered almost a unofficial invite, if you want to call it that. Typically on significant grand openings, if I could put it that way, so whether I'm sure when the RCMP has a grand opening of that facility, it would be an official invite going out to all councils. I'm sure we'll have Parkland Council invited as well. From there, there's a few of those. Then there would be, I guess, another layer of almost informal communication back and forth between, between the mayors, between CAOs, between elected officials and through the EA systems, if you want to call it that, that will, notify each other about events that are coming up. And I think you've seen a few of those come along, that such and such event is happening in Spruce Grove. Please be, if you want to go, contact so-and-so or what have you. But other than that, there's no official hierarchy of events that have a mandatory invite, if you want to call it that, to all regional council, if you put it that way. I think I'll leave it at that, Your Worship. That's just top of head recollection as to what I've seen happening.
Great. Yeah, so thank you. So again, with that is, from my understanding of the time on council, is depends on the formality of the event. So the more formal event that we have, then the more formal of the invite that we give. So for example, you mentioned first night. It's our event, but there's no formalities for mayor and council to speak, to do anything. So there is not a formal invite for them to come. They're definitely aware of it through social media. Our staff are in communication, so they do know about it, and they're welcome to come and attend. But we're not posing with them for a picture at first night and stuff. And so that's.
So my question on to that, because like I say, I thought it was quite nice at the Indigenous Days that we got an invite, but you're right, it was quite an official entrance and all the rest of that. So shy of an official to-do, we don't then give them an official invite?
No.
Okay.
No. So if we go down that road, then are we going to invite them to everything? Are we going to send them an invite to summer sessions, to our community sidewalk sale? So there's a kind of a level where we actually do the formal invite and what we don't. Right? Because there's so many things in our community. If we consider do that, then do we invite all neighbors for everything that we do, which then becomes really staff and time consuming.
Okay. Is this an opportunity to spitball ideas? I would say then, I appreciate what you're saying. You don't want to invite everybody to everything. But some things, like for example, because Spruce Grove kind of takes a lead on the fireworks on Canada Day, maybe picking a thing that is paramount to, or paramount, sort of, it would be our sort of deal, might be not excessive to invite surrounding communities to that.
Yeah, I think it's always at the back of the mind.
We have a list of, and maybe we could ask Spruce Grove or Parkland County of maybe some events that they would like us to be at, because I really don't know when I should and when I shouldn't go to some of their events, and yet I feel very welcome when I do go to events. So I was wondering if there's a possible, like, at the beginning of the year, just look at what are some of the major events that they have, and
So yes, again, for that, again, if it's a major event for them and they want us there, they will send us a formal invite.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're free to go because we're residents of the tri-community, and we'll see it on social media, we'll see it in advertisings, and if we choose to go, then we go. Right? I think there was one example when Councilor Fletcher went to a grand opening or anniversary in Spruce Grove. Well, that's done by the Chamber of Spruce Grove and the City of Spruce Grove. We were not invited. Councilor Fletcher was there because of his other business, and he was welcomed there. That's why we don't invite City of Spruce Grove to our chamber stuff, etc.
We get invited to a lot of stuff. You just pay attention to Facebook. There's somebody from council inviting us to something all the time. So I think in anything that I've ever been to, even though I didn't go, and a good example was what William just used, was the Black Dirt Company, was I showed up for a company that I represent because he's a large client of ours. And yet Mayor Houston and their council made me be part of the whole deal that day. And vice versa, when they come to our community, if there's something that we're at, we make them involved. So I think we get invited to a lot of the stuff. We don't always know exactly what it is, but I think in Parkland County, Spruce Grove, and in Stony Plain, anything that we show up to, never not felt welcome. I think they do an exceptional job, both councils, making you feel part of it. And I don't know that we probably don't get invited personally to a lot of things. I think they get invited to our parade, do they not? Because they come specifically to cook breakfast with us at our parade. So I'm guessing we extend an invite there. So.
Yeah, that's big. And just another good example of that is when we had the grand opening of Veterans Boulevard. So the official invite was for both mayor and council of Parkland County and City of Spruce Grove to attend that grand opening. But the unofficial invite was that we also had Arbor Day right after that with the CN Connections. So those that were there came because it wasn't, we weren't having a lot of formality with that. It was just the CN Connects. So those that were there just transitioned and they were fully welcome.
MP's Canada Day celebration on Friday, and it gave us an opportunity to really just socially visit with a lot of people and a lot of our colleagues from other communities. And we don't get a lot of opportunities to do that, and I think it's nice.
That's good. Thank you. Anything else?
If I just add to that, as we move forward with the tri-region talks and all the rest of that kind of stuff, all the more important, right?
Yes. Anything else to add, Deputy Mayor? See none. Great job, staff, for providing getting the presentations in. Where are we here? And I think our next meeting is next Monday, so we'll see everybody there. Again, to July 3rd, which is tomorrow, is summer sessions. I think last year we were 8 for 8. 8 of the events were outside sunshine, and this year we're 2 for 2. 2 of the events have been inside, so maybe we can hit, maybe we can be 3 for 3. So we'll be here again, or we have planned as someplace else.
Your Worship, through to you and council, I think the rain location, if needed, will be Heritage Pavilion for Wednesday, and that decision will be made on tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Or tomorrow midday, once we have a better sense of the forecast.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll see everybody Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.